and excited to enjoy a little post-draft time with the general manager of the Las Vegas Raiders, John Spytek. And John, okay, we get to Saturday night, the cards are in, all the business of the weekend has been handled. Like, how do you get to decompress after a pretty wild 72 hours for you and the staff?
We took the staff to Chicken and Pickle to have a little post-party or post-draft celebration. You know, there was a few drinks and some good food and pickleball and some cornhole and Jenga got played. So that was the start. And then I played 41 holes of golf on Sunday.
Attaboy, love it.
Until the sun quit on us. That was it.
Love it. Well deserved, right?
That was great.
Rest and relax.
Good for my soul.
Absolutely. Before we get into the actual players and the prospects and all that stuff, like, you know, one thing that we thought was really interesting, and you brought it up during the press conference too, is kind of giving Brandon that moment to shine on Saturday. Obviously, I know it's something that dates back to your time in Tampa, but like big picture, why is giving the people in those positions, and you named off, gosh, darn near everyone on the football staff, like why was that important to you?
Well, first of all, I think it's super important that their work is recognized, and this is the ultimate team sport. And I have an amazing team upstairs and all throughout the building around me. And a lot of attention gets focused on the general manager and the head coach that time of year, but there's 0% chance we could do it, even let alone do it effectively without people like Brandon and all the people I named. I mean, for all the food that got put out there, to the medical reports that got poured through, to taking care of the local pro day guys in the equipment room. I mean, it's just, there's a lot that goes on to put on a draft. And then most importantly, the idea to me was back in Tampa was to recognize the scouts and all that they give up to do this amazing job that we do get to do. But it's a long process to end up with, on average, 7 players. And I want people to appreciate and respect on that.
You know, we've heard from both you and Pete about just the human element to all this, the personality, or excuse me, the relationship element that goes into everything that this program is going to be about. And I wonder for you and Pete, you know, going back to the weekend, do you have an opportunity to kind of, I don't want to say maybe in the moment, reflect on some of the cool moments that you guys do have? I mean, look at a kid like Jack Bash, right? And obviously the incredible, you know, story that got him to this point, and given a chance to call these guys and to make these dreams come true. Like, do you have an opportunity to be like, hey man, that was pretty cool?
I mean, after the fact, sure, but we were just working so hard to create more picks and just pick good players. And you know, to me, I didn't want to get lost in that moment too much. There was a moment or two on Thursday and again on Friday where I realized how special it was, the opportunity to have that opportunity and the responsibility that comes with it. But, you know, it was time to work and time to do our best for the Raiders and for the fan base and to put a great football team out there. And that's what we set out to do.
You know, speaking of that football team and kind of looking at the roster as it sits now, I mean, really for us, as we've gone through it, I mean, it feels like the key word is depth. You got so much deeper at so many key positions. Like, what kind of competition now do you expect, you know, really across the board as we go through the offseason program here now?
We expect it to be an elite level of competition, and the goal was really to do it in every position group possible. And listen, I mean, you never know quite how the draft's going to go, how many of these guys are going to really push the starters that are here, the position groups that are here. I don't know. I mean, sometimes you get a 3rd-round pick and you think he's going to be the one, and it turns out it's the 7th-round pick that does it. But, you know, that's why those day 2 trades, I think, were important for us. There were players on the board that we liked there at 37 and a little bit further down, and we felt like it was a great opportunity to get a few more premium picks and load up a bunch of different position groups with as much competition as possible. Because as coach has said, you know, a million times, competition is going to be the central theme of this program. And, you know, if we're not putting players in rooms that push even the starters who have been here a long time, then we're not doing our jobs the right way.
You know, 5 of the first 6 draft picks on the offensive side of the football, was that something that's just how the board felt you guys over the weekend, or was that kind of a concerted, hey, we really want to add depth and competition and talent on that side of the football?
It was really the way the board fell. You know, we had good defensive players sprinkled in throughout there too, and you know, when we were up to pick, the way we stacked the board and the way we pull names off the board, the best names were just the ones, you know, at the top, and they ended up being offensive players more often than not. So, again, I've never been anywhere where I regretted having good football players on the roster. Wherever you feel like they start or however they get to where they're at, you just like having good football players. And you know, we also were very concerted. We did not want to force needs too early because you know, we have a roster that needs some work, but we just wanted good football players, and we didn't want to force anybody. We would regret it. We look back and this guy goes somewhere else, and damn, that was the player we should have picked.
And I guess the one outlier to that of the first 6 is Darian Porter, right? And I think a guy that really the national...
Why is he an outlier?
No, just in terms of being the one defensive guy from the first...
Oh, outlier. Yeah. Okay, I got you.
Yeah. So much has been made about...
I thought you meant because he was a former receiver.
No. But I'm glad you brought up the fact that he is a former receiver, right? Like, how do you kind of... I don't want to say compartmentalize, but how does that portion of the evaluation go into the evaluation in total, saying like, hey, this guy's done a lot of different things. He's maybe not as... experienced at the position, but we see a lot of room to grow. Like, how do you kind of put that all together for a guy like him?
Yeah, the guys like him are cool because that, to me, I think shows the connection between the scouting staff and the coaching staff. And, it's very easy to recognize that Darian Porter is an elite level athlete. From the testing numbers, the 4.31 to the vertical, which I think was around 40, to the shuttle times, which were elite. His size at almost 6'3". There's so much elite physical ability in his body, but he's not a full-time starter. He's making a transition. Okay, so coach, what do you think? This guy's got all these traits, and he's done some cool stuff with interceptions and hustle plays, but he's a pretty raw, and he needs a lot of work. And when you have Coach Carroll and Joe Woods and PG and all them say, like, we would love to work with this guy. This is who we're looking for. Like, as a scout, that really is empowering because it's like, okay, we can bring players like him to the staff, and they're going to work with them, and they can have a vision for them. And I think hopefully the coaches realize too that we'll be able to bring them players like that in the future that maybe aren't their finished products, or it's not a crystal clear vision for them, but through some communication between the two staffs, we can have a shared vision for what they can be for our team. And then you end up with an elite level athlete that's a great kid that fits in perfectly to coaches or Coach Carroll and PG's scheme.
Does the evaluation for guys that come from some of the smaller schools, obviously we're looking at William & Mary, Montana State, North Dakota State, guys that aren't playing the Alabamas, the Ohio States of the world, does the evaluation for guys like that change at all? Or is it a pretty consistent process across the board, no matter, what conference, what uniform you're playing in on Saturday?
It changes a little bit. You always want your guys to dominate and be one of the better football players on the field when you're watching. I think you have to... When you're doing FCS programs, you have to realize they're not playing against Alabama and Michigan and Georgia, so the level of competition isn't quite to the same standard. So we want to see them really dominate. We wanted to see Charles Grant physically dominate, walk guys onto the sideline on the benches like you saw that, right? We want to see the quarterbacks play at an elite level and lead their teams, and it's a kind of a cool story to me that it's the two that faced off each other in the FCS title game. I mean, they obviously have something in them and their competitive spirits and their ability to play football that led their teams to those records that they had to get to that game. And, when you look at those 3 men that we drafted, I think they all display that in one form or another.
And Tommy's such an interesting case and a guy that really the fan base has really been like, oh, like this could be fun and interesting and new. Like, how do you go about projecting what he's going to be? Obviously, he's got the skills to throw the football, but in terms of athleticism, he can do a little bit of everything. Like, how do you kind of project a guy like him who is kind of a unique jack of all trades type guy?
Lots of conversations like I talked about with Darian too, and a lot of times with the special teams coaches and what their vision would be because, he's going to have to play a part on there. Is it a returner? Is it a punt returner, personal protector, gunner, all that? And talking to Tom and Darius and Cade, they felt like they had a really good plan for him. And so the value kind of rises a little bit. And then, maybe there's a way we can work him in an offense a little bit more as he kind of learns the system and where he evolves. I mean, I was in Tampa for all these years. We had to compete against Taysom Hill, and he was a nightmare. And again, I'm not saying that he's Taysom Hill, but whenever Taysom walked on the field, at the first part of his career, you were like, oh, Taysom Hill's the former quarterback at BYU. When he got a little more established and he started hurting teams, you would go, oh, man, Taysom Hill's on the field again, and he's on the field again, and we better have a plan for him because he's a dominant player. He's just a unique player, right? Like where's he going to be? I don't know. And that can be cool.
In terms of uniqueness too, I mean, you look at a guy like Dante Thornton and it's the height, weight, speed, and we've seen all the incredible highlights over the past 3-4 days, but what part of his game are we not maybe paying enough attention to outside of just the pure like, oh my gosh, like this dude can fly?
Yeah, born to be a Raider, I think. I think MD looked up in the draft room that only Calvin Johnson and DK Metcalf shared similar height, weight, speed measurables as him. But maybe the underappreciated thing about him is that his competitiveness and his spirit in the run game as a blocker, guy that was trained to open up holes and compete, to give running backs lanes to run in was really good. And you don't always get that with big speed guys. A lot of times those guys just want to run deep and catch the ball, but that wasn't what we saw on tape. We saw a guy that was willing to be a good teammate and do whatever he was asked to do.
JJ Peggy is a guy too. It just seems like a fun football player, man. Like a guy who does all these different things. The big fellow who can move and is rangy and can be exciting and dynamic with the ball in his hands, as fun as that is. Like, what do you what do you look at expectations-wise for a guy like JJ?
Well, I would just start by saying, with as fun as it is to watch him carry a football, he is also a very good defensive tackle and a good athlete and a good player on that side of the ball. But, in that, there's a willingness to kind of do whatever it takes. And again, if you're a D-tackle, you get to carry the ball. I think most guys would be excited about that. But he's just an unselfish football player. He's a great kid. We brought him in here on a top 30 visit. He was part of our Top Golf night, and just a fun, good-natured person that loves to play football, and kind of like, wherever you need me, I'll be.
Speaking of those top 30 visits, we've seen around the league that some teams have, for whatever reason, kind of shied away from doing those and maybe aren't as committed to them as they've been as years in the past. Obviously, something important to you and Pete and the guys here. Like, what is the value for you guys now, kind of looking back after going through this first cycle of those 30 visits?
It's a great feel. That provides a great feel for how these kids will act and move in your building. A lot of times they let their guards down around, support staff and treat people a certain way. And we've put a premium on bringing the right people in. And so it's become less about, was he, kind of a pain in the ass, or did he, disrespect people? It's more been like, gosh, that person was amazing. God, he was fun to be around. Man, he treated people the right way. He just loved the energy and the spirit of being here. And we kind of let these kids elevate themselves a little bit. And it doesn't take too long after you've been doing this as many years as I have to get a feel for kids, even if it's only a half an hour in FaceTime, but also just kind of watching them move through Top Golf and the building, how they treat each other and treat people. You can learn a lot from those experiences or those kind of visions, and you draw back on the experience you had and compare it to players that have kind of come before them, and you're like, that kid acts a lot like this person. That person really worked out. They were a great teammate. There's something to that.
Before we let you go here, it's, we look at the state of this roster, and you said it after the draft, every 32 teams are going to feel really good about where you sit. And obviously I know that the Silver and Black are no exception to that rule. But, kind of in big picture, in totality, do you feel good about where this roster is right now? Or is there still room to tinker and tweak and, quarter turn this and that as we get ready for training in July? There
will always be room to tinker and dabble in other things. And we're never going to be satisfied with where the roster's at. Things change too fast, and you got to stay on it. You got to be dynamic. Otherwise you'll fall behind really quick. But I think when Coach and I got this job 3-4 months ago, we set out to try to answer the quarterback question. We tried to answer some of the offensive skill, add more explosive playmakers on that side of the ball, solidify the lines, add some depth to the secondary. We've done all those things, and we got to come together as a team now, and it'll all be out there in front of us. It'll be what we prove every Sunday when we get a chance to play. But I like the quality of man that we've added to this roster. I like the competition that you can feel when you're out in the field. And I expect these 26 men, the 11 drafted and the 15 undrafted free agents, to come in and fit in well and compete and push this roster forward.
Really the next thing I should say on the calendar for us is rookie minicamp, like you mentioned. Just kind of overall, what do you expect to see from, like you said, from the 26 and the other sort of guys that'll be there kind of as they have their first, moments in Silver and Black?
I just want to see them compete. And I want to see them come up here and do their jobs and be accountable and learn the system. And when they get in the field, fly around, catch balls, throw balls, chase, give effort. All the things that we're expecting a Raider to be.
Yeah, and we're excited to see what it looks like just, about a week and a half from now. Well, John, we appreciate the time. Congratulations on a successful first draft. I know there's many more to come, and thanks for hanging out with us, all right?
Appreciate you, Eddie. Always good talking to you.